Hi, everybody. This is the week we're going to look at big data determinism and free will. So they're not entirely all the same. One of these things is not like the other, but at the same time it is, and that is this idea of big data capitalism, which I'll come back to. First, I want to talk to you a little bit about free will and determinism so we can look at the various ways this has been conceived of by philosophers over time. Okay, there we go. So these are the basics, right? All right, so there's a problem with free will, kind of like the problem with consciousness, right? And in that, it seems intuitive to us that we do make choices, and we make, rather important choices. But at the same time, there's a fair amount of evidence that suggests that much of our lives, if not all of our lives, all the important aspects of our lives, are predetermined by genetics, socialization, the laws of physics, the laws of evolution, a whole host of things. And we've just done this unit on Foucault and the idea of how institutions shape our identity. So we can kind of get a feel for why this would become a question for philosophers. Do we have free will, or is everything determined? So just some terminology here, and kind of a range of terminology from libertarianism. That and indeterminism are similar. Libertarianism focuses on the individual, in the free will of the individual. Indeterminism says that not everything in nature is caused by preceding events. So determinism as a rule can't be true. So this is more an argument of cause and effect. This is an argument about the identity of the individual and the characteristic of free will. In the middle are the compatibilists that view that, some things are determined, but our actions can still be free. So we can still choose to act a certain way, even though there's all these determining factors in our lives. Incompatibilism is the view that if determinism is true, then no one can act freely. So they would disagree with the compatibilists because they would say, well, if determinism is true, that's it. We don't make any of our own decisions. Determinism itself is a doctrine that every event is determined by preceding events and the laws of nature. I would also include forces active within a field of constructs like institutions, religion, government, education, all come into play, family come into play in predetermining our action. And hard determinism is the view that free will does not exist and no one acts freely. This is the belief that every minutia of our lives is already determined. Now, I've not met personally any hard determinists. You're going to see a quote from one or two, but I have known determinists who believe that there's really, in our lives, there's really nothing important to be decided. We go through life reacting to it the way we're programmed to do, based on a number of different things. It depends on the determinist you're talking to. Down beyond libertarians, there are existentialists, and existentialists are people who believe that we have freedom of the most important kind, which is freedom to make meaning. And we'll come to that. I haven't put them on here, but we will come to that into them. All right. So these are you'll see various slides here about different standings or different positions on that chart I just showed you. So this is an argument to people about determinism. This is a hard determinist. Baron de Holbach is a hard determinist who sees pretty much life as a gearbox, right? And the things that happen in life are just preordained to happen. And he argues that we pretend we're free. We feel that we are free, But like consciousness, to some people who are physicalists and believe that consciousness arises only from physical processes and has no uniqueness about it other than it gives us this sense that we're a unique individual when in fact it's just an illusion. Baron de Holbach believes the same thing about free will and determinism in particular. Compatibilism, this is a Stace quote. You should be familiar with these quotes as you go through the readings and the content for the week. And here's an argument for compatibilism. We have the power to do what we want. Nothing is preventing us from doing it. Though if those two things are true, then we have free will. Now, there are systems in place that prevent us from doing what we want, right? Societal norms, laws, moral constraints, etc. But we, in many of those cases, we can choose to do otherwise. We just have to be willing to suffer the consequence. This is a funny quote by Stephen Hawkins, just there for giggles. And this is a little bit more delineation on what really makes up classic compatibilism, the idea that we could do otherwise, whether we do or not, that we could do is evidence of free will. And certainly you remember Nietzsche and the idea of pulling down all the idols and not letting society determine what kind of individual we would be. And you remember his idea about the herd. He would say the herd exists. In the herd, people have decided to not exercise their free will, but one day someone might exercise their free will, deviate, become a superwoman or a superman, and change the whole course of humanity. At the core of Nietzsche's philosophy is a strong belief in free will, and this is very much part of the Renaissance or the Enlightenment. We really, in the Enlightenment and up until modernity in the 20th century, had a very strong view about human free will. It's only as we've gotten deeper into science and begun to understand the various influences of our institutions in sociology, of the chemicals in the brain, in neuroscience and psychiatry, and evolution, etc., that we begin to see that there are a lot of factors that come to determine how we act in our daily lives. It's probably been more of an argument since the 20th century forward, this issue about free will and determinism, because it's only in this period of time that really there have been pushback against the Enlightenment's idea that man is and woman, men and women are uniquely free to act as they wish. There are some strong stances against determinism. This is one by William Rowe. This is another by Sam Harris, just to give you a flavor of the argument. This might help you as we get into both the quiz and the projects and discussions for this week. This is Schopenhauer. He was making an argument against compatibilism that says he's a free will guy, right? But it seems clear from thought experiments that an agent can do what she wants without external constraints and still not act freely. Therefore, compatibilism is false. So he's making an argument against compatibilism as a viable position, but he's making it a little bit different than the two guys before. Pro-libertarian stance based on phenomenology is basically the argument that because it seems like we're free to choose, we are free to choose. Now, that's kind of dicey category because we know that we have a sense of a unique viewpoint of what it means to be us, me to be Michael Carter, you to be, say your name. So we believe that there's something unique about that experience that I'm having as the person that I am, and that you are having as the person that you are, phenomenologically. And that's an argument for consciousness. Just like it's an argument for consciousness, it's also an argument for some people who take a pro-libertarian stance that is phenomenological. Now, libertarian here is not like the political libertarian. Political libertarians, though, are related to have there's a tie there. Specifically, political libertarians want less government, not more, so the individual is more free to live their life as they wish. So inherent in the libertarian political stance is free will, and always it's a balance in politics and in political philosophy between how much freedom, how much free will are you willing to give up in order to be a part of a society. And usually the reason you would be part of a society is so that you would be more secure, right? This social contract idea that you read about in the book, or you will read about in the book when we get to political psychology or political philosophy. So this this stance is basically, again, it seems like I'm free, therefore I am free. It seems like I have a conscience, therefore I have a conscience. This is a little bit further explanation of libertarianism as a position within the free will determinism continuum spectrum. So a little bit more reading here for you to do. And these names I'm associating with positions. Like I said, they may come in handy on the quiz. And then there are the existentialists. Man is condemned to be free because once thrown into the world, he's responsible for everything he does. Now, this is not a pick you up by your bootstraps type of free will. This is, you're thrown into life and you're just responsible for making sense out of it. You are a meaning-making machine, basically. This is Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning. It's a small book. You should read it if you haven't. But basically, he argues that we're here to make meaning. Yes, we have other drives and other needs from physical needs to material needs, and we're born into certain circumstances that we have nothing to do with. For instance, Frankl was born a Jew in Germany and ended up in a concentration camp. While at the same time, my grandfather, which would have been Frankl's age at the time, was born in America and went to fight the Germans and try and free people from concentration camps. So two different people in two different conditions, but both acting in ways to create meaning. I'm pretty sympathetic to this. I like the existentialist position because it really, we could talk all day about free will and determinism. The real issue is if everything is determined, then how can we hold anybody responsible for anything, right? I mean, if it's all determined, how can I ever decide if anyone is guilty? If it's just nature and nurture and institutions that drive people to make these actions, we're never going to do that because there's no way to actually have a society if we can't hold people accountable. We can't deliver the safety of the social contract as a society if we just let people not be accountable for their actions. It's contrary to most of what the Enlightenment experiment's about, and the experiment we call America is about. So I like this because it sets aside really, you may be determined, right? You might be, but you still have the free will to make meaning out of where you land in this deterministic equation. So it to me, it's almost operating on two layers. It redefines what the choice is to be made. The choice is not to be made based on whether you're born German Jew or American Methodist, right? Those are not your choices. You're born into those. Your name's not even your choice. And there's a whole bunch of choices you don't get to make. But to an existentialist, the choice that you can make is what you do with that life. That is free will to an existentialist. So born poor, my grandmother, poor as a church mouse, um, born poor, died poor, right? Lived to be 90. She lived her life and got meaning out of it, right? She left a mark. That is free will to an existentialist. In profound free will is what is sometimes called, or profound freedom. And Sartre argues that humans are not born with a predefined purpose or essence. So we don't even have in his mind an essence about us. Instead, we come into existence and then we define ourselves by actions and choices. Now, it doesn't mean we don't come in within certain parameters. We do, but we make choices that define who we are, that make sense out of who we are. So we have a radical freedom and responsibility. And there's a certain anguish that comes to it, because it's not like anybody's coming to save us, right? Nobody's going to figure out this puzzle for us. Only we can figure out this puzzle. And that's to me a pretty powerful argument. It's pretty convincing to me, because the randomness of life, on top of the many things that we know are cause and effects in our lives, is pretty overwhelming, but it doesn't seem to explain everything that we sense intuitively about being here. And for the existentialist, that thing we sense is our ability to define our purpose and our essence. So in that sense, we're free. The external stuff, it's not relevant, they would argue. Now, there are postmodernists who would want to stand against that and say, well, yeah, it is relevant, Foucault being one. But I still find this a pretty compelling argument. I choose to be ignorant. If I'm ignorant about it, I just choose it. All right, so we're going to talk about big data capitalism now. This might be a term you're not familiar with, but big data capitalism is also sometimes called platform capitalism. It's sometimes called surveillance capitalism. It really has to do with how our society has come to monetize the data of people's lives. So just a quick capitalism 101. I want you to understand that the way capitalism works is the owner owns the means of production. This, wherever you work, whoever owns the grocery store you work in, or the lawn service you work for, or the office that you work in, they have the means of production, whether that is a factory, inventory, services, whatever it is. They set up all that around you. They provide all that. The school provides the means of production. My office, my computer. And for that, then they need people to plug into the means of production in order to create a product that can be sold to the consumers. Right? So in the case of the university, we have professors, we need land, etc. Right? We need maintenance, we need books, we need computers, we need labs, we need software, etc. That's all there. And then we plug in these things, a place, and people. Right? And then we sell the product to people graduating from high school as a 2-year opportunity to have a college experience here in a community college in a much different environment before going on to a bigger university, or maybe just here to pick up trade, or to take one step out of a multi-step program that you're going to be in. But anyway, we sell that to consumers. Well, for all this to work, we actually have to take the labor, the value of the labor, and we have to pay the labor less than what we can sell the product for. Get that? I mean, there has to be a margin there, right? Because there are operating costs. There's the salary. There's all sorts of things that go into a business, right? So we have to have people And if you work in a factory or a store or anything like that, they pay you less than your labor is valued in the market being consumers, right? Because that's the only way they have surplus. It's called surplus capital, right? So I pay you X, I sell it for Y. Z, the difference between Y and X, is surplus capital. Some of that gets plowed back into the means of production. Some of it gets given back into the profits of the owners. So capitalism inherently works only because we can pay people less than their work is worth, right? In the market, the work is worth Y, but we pay them X, and that's so we can have the difference here. That's not how every economic system works, but it is how capitalism works. So just keep that in mind as we move through this idea of big data capitalism. So how does that work, right? I mean, how does big data capitalism work? I mean, one example of big data capitalism would be social media, right? Netflix is big data capitalism. But social media is probably the better example because you get social media for free. I mean, there were models that would have existed that would have allowed for people to pay for social media, but the real growth was possible only because it was given away. Now, when you give away a product, the product being the social media platform, then you can rest assured that the product is not the product. See what I'm saying? Because if you give it away, this doesn't work. That doesn't work. If you give it away, that doesn't work, right? You can't give away the product here. It won't work. So if you get a product for free, here's what you need to understand. If the product is free, you are the product. Think about that. They can't have a free product. So that platform is not the product. The platform is the means of production. The means of production. TikTok platform is the means of production. You are the natural, you're the worker, right? You're going to be ultimately the product sold. You're all things in this model. What I mean by that is TikTok makes money by selling data about your habits and pushing ads to you and influencers to you, etc., etc., etc. So you are the product, but more precisely, your data is the product. I think the old saying is, if the service is free, you are the product. I think in social media that the service is free, and you are the raw materials, right? You are the raw materials that go into the machine, the platform, to generate output that can be sold, data. Now, you will also be the product. Once the data is sold, it is being used to make you do certain things. And until we had massive amounts of technological devices that plugged us in everywhere we went, that was not a possible business model. But it's one of the only business models today, is the creation of big data that can be sold to interested parties and used by those parties to influence what it is we do. So in one sense, we're the raw materials. In another sense, we're actually the product being sold. And this is just the unprecedented scale, speed, and intellect that we have from technology that's made big data possible. We have 8.1 billion people, a little bit more than that, in the world today. 5 billion of them have social media accounts. 5.4 are using the internet. 5.6 have unique mobile phone subscriptions. $40 billion was invested in processing, data processing, servers. Now, this is a really old stat, it's only 1 year old, but it's really old because the amount being spent now is astronomically higher thanks to AI. But $40 billion spent in processing in the third quarter. I'm sorry. Let's see, 40 billion invested in processing by third quarter. No, by Q1 24. Okay, I don't know what the 3 is there, so excuse the error. And in this environment, this is a scene from a movie or a docudrama you are to watch this week called The Social Dilemma. And this is depicting algorithms. Algorithms are the ones that pull the strings that determine what you're going to do on a social media platform. It seems to us that we're doing what we want to do and that we're getting this very personalized experience. But after you watch the movie, you have to come away with at least entertaining the idea that you're not nearly as free in that environment as you think you are. But there's near real-time capacity now with the speed of programmers, the connectivity, speed of programs, the chips, the connectivity, the surveillance, the absolute surveillance of our entire lives. My car is connected to the dealer, right, into the manufacturer, and everywhere I drive, if I wanted to, I could put an app on there that might get me a better insurance rate, right, if I let them surveil my driving habits, right. So everything is surveilled, and now we're getting into smarter and smarter tech, right. The algorithms of today are much different than those that preceded them not that long ago. So there are a couple of videos here. This is the first one. This is a really good video breaking down the battle for your time. And once you get done with that, I think you have to ask yourselves, how much of a puppet are you? This is a scene from the Social Dilemma, and it looks almost like the Matrix, where we had the pods. So you have to ask yourself, are you a puppet or are you a battery? Right? In one sense, you're the raw material. In another sense, you're the battery powering that as well. Right? Maybe the raw material in this case is the battery, because the data is in the power that's in the raw material that's extracted and then used both to manipulate you and to create other possibilities for commerce. So, are you a puppet? Are they just pulling your strings out there on social media? Or are you battery? Is data the essential power of the late capitalist economy today? In one of the exercises you're going to do is to do a social media audit, and I'd like you to entertain the possibility that they're not just predicting what you're going to do next, they are actually causing you to do it. Now, this is the reason I bring this up inside of this module on free will and determinism, this is another layer of determinism based on so much computing power and so much knowledge about the neuroscience of the mind and the personalities of human beings that using this powerful computing infrastructure and all the data that we can harvest from it, it's actually possible to cause people to do things, not just predict their next move, but cause their next move. And there's been some pretty tragic incidences of that on social media. So this is another video. Be sure you watch it. This guy's funny, but he also does a really good job of talking about algorithms. You'll run into algorithms again in the Social Dilemma movie, and those are the system by which data is both extracted and applied and created about you. They are the engine, right? They are, I've argued before that they are the means of production, right? You're the raw material. The algorithms are the means of production, but you're also the data is what gets sold but then it's used on you to sell you things and to cause you to spend more time on social media. So in effect, you're the product that they're extracting. You're the raw material that the algorithms extract the data from, and then using that data, you become the product. So it's basically a closed system. You're doing the work, and the work's being done on you. Now you could argue, doesn't this happen with every new thing? I mean, don't we all go, oh my God, we burned books, we burned albums because of the Beatles, because of all that sinful rock and roll. Everything new that comes along, is it not the case that we kind of panic about what the implications will be? And as far as I know, I've not read much on negative implications of rock and roll, but I'm sure there's books out there. But the fact of the matter is, whatever we thought was going to happen when the music that the Beatles played became the music that was played, we're still here today, right? So why would it be any different when with technological advances? Aren't we just overreacting? And not to just be a doom scroller or a doomsayer, it's not the same, right? Today is not the same as 50 years ago by a long shot. The computing power today is growing. We're on the verge, I think, and there's some debate about it, but we are closer than we've ever been, I think we can say that, to quantum computing, which will absolutely exponentially change how we do computer processing. But we already have vast server farms. There are vast fields, Neo. There are vast server farms where computing power is unimaginable. Look up AI computers and look up supercomputers and see how big the supercomputer at Oak Ridge, Tennessee is. And it's not even the biggest anymore, right? There's one, I think the biggest one ever is being built in Chicago. And Elon Musk has his own version in Memphis. So I do think it's different now. And I don't think there has been quite a time where we have been both the raw materials and the product of our economic framework. And we are today. And it depends on us remaining pacified and staying on our phones. All an algorithm cares about is that it keeps you on whatever platform it is currently working for. So anyway, we will talk more about this and what our options are as we get towards the second half of the semester. But I hope that made sense to you, and I look forward. I've got to figure out where where is the button? There's the button. Okay. Peace out, man. Peace out. See you later. I don't even know how to do the hand thing anymore.